Welcome back to Risk Management. Today we're going to do an exercise based on the video we watched in the last class regarding Edward Deming's red bead experiment. Today we're going to think about the red bead experiment with an application. Bar pass rates at low-tiered law schools. Law schools in many states have different tiers and rankings according to the U.S. News and World Report, or other systematic attempts to categorize the quality of law schools. My own law school, Thomas Jefferson, falls in what traditionally was called the fourth tier, and nowadays is ranked as second tier, where the tiers are divided only into two. Our school has traditionally struggled with a sufficient bar pass rate, as many schools across the country do. And many different strategies have attempted to be implemented over time by various administrations and faculty at our school to improve our bar pass rate. The question is, are any of our attempts effective, and are we in the outset doing what is actually going to be productive to accomplish that goal? Or, like what Edward Deming showed us in the red bead experiment, are we in fact tinkering with the system that in fact is doomed nonetheless not to improve? I want you to take the next 10 minutes, and you can turn the tape off after I finish speaking, to write out a list of different things you could imagine that as an administrator or a faculty member at a law school that were lower tiered, how you would attempt to improve the rate of bar passage among students at your school. I'd like you to come up with at least 10 different action items for how to improve the bar pass rate. There's no right and wrong here. This is an opportunity for you to brainstorm and create a scenario in which the outcome is going to improve. Got the idea? Okay, let's take 10 minutes and then we'll come back and pick this up. So now we've come back and hopefully you've created your own list of about 10 to 15 items where you are going to improve the bar pass rate of your lower tiered law school. I created my own list of 11. Yours may differ to some extent from my list. That's not anything to worry about. My point is simply to try to create an example from which we can work. Think about your own action items as we go through here. Some may overlap with mine and some may be different, but ultimately I want you to scrutinize your own to see whether in fact, after reflection and after thinking about the red bead experiment and its results, you are in fact going to solve the low bar pass problem at your hypothetical law school. Okay, here's my list. I'll read them off and then we'll go through and think about whether these items are in fact actionable and will be successful. First, I suggest that we get students and admit them if they have higher LSAT scores and undergraduate GPAs. Second, I suggest that we should attract such students by giving scholarships to students with high grades, and to students who are performing well in law school that we offer scholarships to retain them so that they don't transfer. I also suggest that the contrary should occur. We should make students who have high grades but who transfer to other schools after their first or second years at our school pay back their scholarships to us. This forces them to either be penalized and stay, or to give the school its money back. 4, I would allow the school to count transfer students as their own when tabulating bar pass results. We educated them at least for part of the time before they took the bar. Why do we get no credit for it? Number 5, I would make all bar-tested subjects mandatory in school. Number 6, I would offer more multiple choice testing, coincident with the fact that the bars now test multiple choice more heavily than they used to. Number 7, I would start bar preparation at a law school earlier than the last semester at the school for the students. This will improve their opportunity to study and hopefully improve on their bar pass. Number 8, I might make law school longer than it currently is to accommodate the fact that there is more to law school than just classes, that they need to actually study for the bar as well. This will accommodate more time and allow them a more leisurely pace with which to get ready for the bar. Number 9, I will hire professors who are former bar exam graders. This gives the insight and know-how that people need in order to pass the bar. Number 10, I will create an in-house bar study program rather than using outsourced programs such as Barbary, Kaplan, Princeton Review, and so forth. And number 11, we will fail out an increasing number of underperforming students in school so that those students do not take the bar exam and therefore drag down our numbers. Okay, that's my list. I'm sure you have many items among all of you that are different, and that's something for us to discuss on the chat boards. I want to walk back through these examples, however, and having the experience and hindsight of having been a faculty member for well over 7 years now at my own law school and a couple of others, I've seen how faculty and administration handle ideas such as the ones I've just proposed, and I can walk through the examples I've just given and tell you from experience what schools have done with these proposed action items. Next, we'll then turn to asking, are all of these things actually solving the problem? Or is there a red bead issue here? That is, the confounder is not just one or two things, but the whole system itself. That the risk of low bar pass rate is not coming from the school, but from the system. Let's look again at these and see how these action items have been implemented or not in the past. First, getting students with a higher LSAT score or undergraduate GPA. On the surface, this sounds attractive because, after all, one has an intuition that the better the undergrad GPA or LSAT, the better the bar pass rate. First, it's not entirely true. The statistics don't perfectly correlate. LSAT scores and undergrad GPAs are somewhat predictive of bar pass rate, but nowhere nearly as predictive as law school grades. For that reason, simply because you go and admit better students based on undergraduate performance does not necessarily mean you're going to improve your bar pass rate. Second, of course, there are many schools who would like to implement this strategy. In fact, all schools in a given state would like to implement a strategy to improve their standing by admitting higher quality students. Of course, if everyone adopts this approach, then it's a zero-sum game. When one school takes a student of better caliber, the other school does not take that student, and therefore some schools naturally will rise while others fall. Now, there might be better admission strategies to attract such students or not, but the fact of the matter is it's not so easy simply to just say, let's go get better students. Number 2, let's give scholarships to students with high grades. Most schools actually already do this. I'd be surprised if you found any school that weren't doing it. So this is something that already happens. Number 3, let's make students with high grades who transfer to other schools pay back their scholarships to us. Superficially, this creates sort of a carrot and stick incentive for people. A carrot if you stay with us and a stick if you dare leave. First of all, there's always a question raised about, is this ethical? And how would this play out in the news? Because if you're trying to improve your bar pass rate, that might be one risk your school is facing. But publicity and public perception of your school is an equally valid concern. Because if it's negatively affected, students may not come to your school. And your school may suffer in the media unnecessarily. For that reason, telling the public that you're going to, in fact, take back students' scholarships after they've earned them, for whatever reason, seems to be a very suspect practice when you're managing the risk of public perception. For that reason, our school, as well as others, have declined to follow this approach. Number 4, allow a school to count transfer students as their own when tabulating bar pass results. Well, this would be nice, but the ABA and other institutions outside of the school's control don't permit this to happen. It would be like double counting, and ABA doesn't permit that. Number 5, make all bar-tested subjects mandatory in school. Well, on the surface, this sounds logical and intuitive as a thing to do. Of course, when you're in California, there are several dozen bar-tested subjects. It's not so easy to mandate that each one of them be mandatory in school when students have different career aspirations and different outlooks and different availability to take classes. Second, it's not altogether clear that students who take classes in a subject necessarily correspond to better passage of that subject. At least in studies I've seen, that's not ultimately always the case. Number 6, make more multiple choice available to students to practice with. We're doing this currently, and we've taken to this approach in our school as a result of the fact that California is moving to a multiple choice heavy exam. So we're anticipating that and trying to get ahead on the issue. Number 7, start bar prep earlier than the last semester in school. We have done this too. We started it as early as the first semester in school in the last few years after we had a bar crisis back in 2010. And students, even in their first semester, are taking sort of preparatory classes for bar preparation. Number 9, make professors who are former bar examiners part of your faculty. We've done this too. We've incorporated people who were previous bar consultants to come and work with us on faculty, even though they don't fit the traditional mold of the type of caliber of people that we're looking for as law professors. Number 10, create an in-house bar study program rather than Barbary, Kaplan, etc. We did this, and we actually spent multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to retain such experts. Interestingly, they actually did have a higher bar pass rate, but very few of our students preferred to avail themselves of it. We couldn't make it mandatory, and so the students chose to use Barbary despite the fact that there was a virtually free in-house and higher performing program, and so the program was ultimately canceled despite the fact that it had good results. Number 11, fail out underperforming students. This is an obvious strategy that if students have low grades, why are we going to let them sit for the bar in the first place? Just get rid of them, and then you'll have no bar pass problems. Of course, then you'll have another problem that comes up potentially, an enrollment problem, that you have effectively weeded out a certain number of students and tuition has dropped. That leads to the necessity of reduction in workforce, and that of course can also kill morale. So in trying to solve one problem, the bar pass problem, you may create new problems for yourself, namely a reduced or atrophied staff and morale issues. So number 11, while we have actually done some of that at our own school in past years, has also led to the decline in our workforce. Okay, these are examples of things that I came up with. You probably have other examples. I've talked a little bit about how our school has tried to handle, in the circumstances I proposed, these different aspects of it. I'm sure I've missed a few things over the years that we've attempted. I know other schools try different things too. Despite all of this, our bar pass continues to be a chronic problem, as does the case for many low-performing, low-tiered schools. And the question becomes, why is this happening? Why do low-tiered schools not move out of the low tier? And I want to suggest that there's a red bead problem here. Despite all the efforts and the many, many heartaches and hours we have put in, consulting, working, studying all of these problems, we have not improved, nor have many of these schools. What's going on? Is there something outside of our control driving these factors? And can you think of what that might be? Well, I want to suggest that one of the big problems going on here is, indeed, there's a red bead issue. Namely, that the bar pass rate is not set by the schools or by the ABA, but by the State Board of Bar Examiners. And California, where my school happens to be, is one of the hardest in the country. The bar pass rate in California ranges in the last 10 years or so between 45 and 55% of all examiners in July bar exam, which is actually the higher pass rate of the two exams, July and February. California also has 41 ABA or state accredited law schools and 7 unaccredited law schools, making for a highly, highly concentrated population of law schools, even though the state is large. By contrast, Iowa has the easiest bar pass rate in the country currently, around 85 to 88%. It, in turn, has only 2 law schools, Drake and the University of Iowa. Now I know what some of you are more than California. That's true, it is. There's about 38 million people in California and about 3 million in Iowa. Nonetheless, if you take into account per capita how many law schools there are in each state, California still has about double the number of law schools as Iowa does. So it means that student populations are necessarily more diluted in California, and competing to get better students is that much harder. Plus, you're competing against a lower bar pass rate. All else being equal, what this suggests is that the bar pass problem really is something that the bar examiners could solve themselves, for example, in a state like California, if only they'd take it upon themselves to do so. If California tomorrow raised the bar pass to 90%, we'd have no more problems at our law school about bar pass rate. They'd all be passing. The point is that I'm trying to make here, the red bead issue is the fact that the state bar examiners, not the law schools, are driving force behind most of why people fail the bar exam. And for that reason, Despite the countless efforts that go on at law schools to try to improve bar pass, most of this is simply fruitless and nonsensical. The most predictive statistic of bar pass, as I've said, is law school grades, starting as 1Ls. So the one thing we can do is look at how students are performing in school, and from that we can predict how they're going to perform on the bar. Of course, students also get that information, and students who know they're performing well in school at low-tiered schools are very inclined to transfer to higher-tiered schools. This means that, in fact, not only do we have the issue that the state bar controls 90% of what goes on for bar pass, but that the little control we do have over it, namely assessing our students, allows the good ones to leave. So, in conclusion, I want to offer 3 passing thoughts about California's bar exam and the red bead experiment. Number 1, most of the bar pass issue is out of the hands of any school. State bars set pass rates, not the schools. Number 2, the more schools in a state, the more intense the competition over getting passable students. Schools at the top of the pecking order, places like Stanford, don't typically have to worry about this because their reputation alone carries them so that from year to year they can assume that a good student population will come. However, at schools like Thomas Jefferson or other 4th-tier schools, we have to know that it's going to be a more intense competitive environment to find suitable students in order to pass a bar. And this is not something that the school controls so much as the state board. Finally, lower-tiered schools in states with low bar pass rates, and many schools, have a systematic disadvantage of perpetual low bar pass rates. It's hard to climb out of the cellar, particularly in a state that's so saturated with law schools. And so, this is what I want to suggest, is that when you're in fact looking at a problem like this, it may not be that your faculty are to blame, or even the students, so much as a bar pass rate set in a state that's completely out of the hands of the faculty, the staff, the administrators, or the students. And for that reason, we have a red bead experiment, where we should not be blaming any of the people at the school, but rather perhaps the state board for setting an onerous burden on everyone. And with that, we've seen a real-world example of the red bead experiment and how it might apply even to your own lives. For the discussion today, can you think of other examples where the red bead experiment's results indicating that causation is being systematically misassigned to the false source of the problem occurs? Give 1 or 2 examples and put it on the chat boards. I and your classmates will be interested to see those. Okay, we're done for today. Hope to see you on the chat boards.